I'm Dr. Joseph Dorsey. I'm on the faculty at the Patel College of Global Sustainability at the University of South Florida. I wear many hats, so one of the things that I do is I oversee our academic capstone program, which involves internships and research projects. I also direct our food sustainability and security concentration, as well as being the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs. Well, we live in a modern society now, and that modernization means that things are produced for us. You know, we're consumers. And so consumption of food is necessary on a daily basis. But where's that food coming from? It's being provided by corporations, and it's being regulated by stores. And so unless you're growing your own food, you have to go to someone else to get it. You know, a lot of people don't have time to cook, or they don't have the skill sets to cook, so they go to a restaurant or maybe a fast food operation to get their food. And so, you know, those foods are not necessarily the most healthy choices that one can make, maybe high in fat, salt, and sugars, which can affect people's health. So if you want fresh fruit and vegetables, even if you have access to it, it may not be affordable. You know, so I think there's sort of like 3 A's, you know, there's access to it, you know, can you get to it, is it available, and can you afford it? And if you're having problems with any of those, then that creates a certain insecurity in your food supply and your exposure to healthy, fresh fruits and vegetables. There's several ways to look at this. As I said before, the traditional way of growing food crops is with soil, with rain and sunlight. And these are the natural ways that life grows. You know, you don't necessarily need to have sunlight, you need light. You don't necessarily need to have soil, you need nutrients. There's no replacement for water, obviously. But the thing about hydroponics is growing crops in water rather than in soil. And so the only other thing that you need besides the water, the nutrients, the sun, and the light is something to hold the root structure. Once you can provide a structure for the roots, then pretty much the plant can grow. The advantages of, say, hydroponics is that, okay, think of it this way. If you put a plant in soil and it starts to grow, the roots have to pull the nutrients out of the soil. It's kind of like, come on, give me some nitrogen, I need some carbon, I'll have some phosphorus. So it's pulling these things out of it. But if you have it floating in hydroponics, then it's sort of like just like takes it very easily. So it's almost like the difference between if you want protein of having to carve a steak, you know, cutting and you got chew, or just drink a protein shake out of a straw. You know, you get the protein in you much quicker. And so hydroponics allows the plants to absorb the nutrients quicker, and so they grow faster. I've done this experiment myself, is to see that when you're growing 2 plants simultaneously, one in soil and one in hydroponically, the one hydroponically grows much quicker, you know, and it still grows into the same plant. You know, as long as the right nutrients are there, genetics will take over. The other thing is, like I said, with vertical farming, you add that to hydroponics, now you're adding layers, spatial layers. Traditional agriculture is horizontal and flat. So we would, like say in a room like this, if we were growing crops, we'd grow it all back in rows and stuff. But if we didn't have that access to this space, the horizontal space, you can still grow upward too. So we could have different layers. And we could even actually grow more in this room, having layers going up, stacking it, rather than just having it flat across, like say acreage or whatever. So the advantages of hydroponic is, like I said, an acceleration in the production of the food, an optimization of space. And most of the time it's grown within a greenhouse, or you can do it in warehouse, you can even do it in shipping containers, someplace that can block out pests, you know, from coming in, or vandalism. You have to have a light source. You know, we have LED lights that can simulate, you know, the same frequency as the sun. Or if you're in a greenhouse, you know, the sunlight coming through the glass can help it. But as long as there's sunlight, the plants will grow, as long as there's some kind of light. And the nutrients tend to be recirculated. That's the other thing. There's pumps and valves that are involved, so you can recirculate the nutrients in the water. And think about this another way, that growing plants outside, there's a chance that it's going to evaporate the water, or it's going to go into the soil and a lot of it's going to be lost, and it may not even get to the roots at all. But hydroponics is in trays and so forth, so all the water goes right to the roots. But also it's recirculated, so it's not evaporated. So you can use the same water over and over several times. And like I said, if it's in a greenhouse, you can do it all year round. So where you have to limited by seasons outside, if you're doing it in a controlled environment, you could grow that crop all year round. So the yield could be even more. So you grow it faster. And so for urban environments, I think this is a possible solution to food insecurity, is to have buildings where we're growing crops in those buildings. I have a scenario I'm going to mention. Just imagine going down to downtown St. Petersburg, and when you're down there, you see these high-rise buildings, right? And that's usually people living in these buildings and so forth. But kind of like, imagine if it wasn't just people living there, but these buildings were used to grow food. That certain layers, would there be a layer of vegetables, a layer, a floor of, and imagine people living there, who work there, live there, or some kind of discounted rent, So there's 24-hour people living in the place where they work with the plants to make sure that they're being cultivated. And imagine at the bottom of the floor of this building is restaurants and cafes and shops. And the food that's being grown in that building are now what you're eating, what you're shopping for in the store, what you're eating in the restaurant. And imagine trucks outside behind the building taking that fresh fruit and vegetables out into various communities throughout the city, taking it right directly to them, and people coming there. And so to me, these are like food hubs that we could create within urban environments that are protected from environmental problems, using the space of an urban environment, employing people, and supplementing the food that maybe start to become more scarce from the industrial ways of growing food in fields, plus cutting back on those fields, because a lot of times they cut down forests to clear that land for cattle and so forth, and that affects the ecosystems and causes more problems with global warming and so forth. So maybe this is a solution, just something to imagine, and hopefully something that we can make real. Yeah, anyone can do it. There's just certain principles that are involved. I mean, there's systems that can do it for you. And that, that's a business idea that I've thought about for years, of having maybe hydroponic towers, that can be delivered to people's homes. They can keep it on the patio and basement and so forth, and lighting systems. But I think the key to that would be a maintenance program that goes with it. Because when you give people the technology and just walk away, and they don't know what they're doing, or something fails, they start to say, this didn't work, and they throw it out and they don't even try it again. So I always feel that to have successful growing systems in urban places, that not only do we give you the technology, but it's sort of like a maintenance thing that every 3 months a technician comes by to make sure that everything's running. But as far as growing food in community gardens, that's possible. People can grow it in their own backyards and sometimes front yards, depending upon what neighborhood you're in. A lot of times we have to deal with the neighborhood association, residential associations that don't necessarily want people to grow food. I think what has happened is that we've gotten so far away from being an agrarian society and being so urbanized that we've given that to the industries. Yes, you grow the food, we'll just eat it from the stores. So there's going to be some time before we start to get more comfortable with the idea of growing it ourselves, growing it in our communities, growing it on empty lots, or places that are abandoned, or even building places to grow food, like I said before, building these little hubs and shipping containers, warehouses. A lot of places that are abandoned could be turned into urban gardens. And it's just a matter of the political will and the financial support for these things. And having a farm is such a basic aspect of our human development. I mean, that's what distinguishes us from the animals. We have our own ecology. Animals have an ecology that they dwell within. And agriculture is a human ecology. It's how we feed ourselves. We used to be very close to the land, and so the food was something that you spend time cultivating and eating. And we get away from that now. You know, if you live in an urban environment, a lot of times there's nothing natural that you are eating. Everything may be processed, you may be eating out all the time. And the long-term effects of that can be the health. When you lose that connection with the earth, you sometimes lose, connection with your own body and what its needs are. And so I think in one way, it can help us to be a healthier society if people continue to work with the food, and good food too. Food that's beneficial, that's natural, that's healthy and fresh, and then it will help invigorate the communities because the people won't spend as much time going to the doctor or taking drugs and medications and so forth. It's kind of intrinsic, but something we don't think about.